Day 10 in the Journey of Learning. I will complete the VLAN configuration by adding VTP configuration and STP configuration. VTP stands for VLAN Trunking Protocol. STP stands for Spanning Tree Protocol. Let's get started. Remember, we always like to script or plan our configuration changes. We don't want to have to stumble through the configuration as we're about to actually implement it. So it's best to always do this first. Now, what is VTP? VTP or VLAN Trunking Protocol is the manager of the propagation or distribution of VLANs throughout the network. So VTP will distribute to the rest of the network what VLANs we have available. So as we add other switches to the network, we want them to receive that information. In order to do that, we have to set one switch as the server of VTP. Other switches will be designated client. There is another configuration mode, but it's not relevant here because I'm not using that. It's just transparent mode. I'm using server mode and client mode in this particular project. So remember, servers will serve who? The client. Servers serve the client. So our server switch will propagate or distribute to the client switches what VLANs are available. Next, we want to set VTP to the best version that we have available, which will be VTP version 2. We need to give the VTP instance a name and set a password. Now, these two things here, the domain name and password, is a practice that we use to harden the network and to secure the network. We don't want unauthorized switches connecting to the network and then receiving our VLAN information. If they don't have the domain name and password, then they will be prevented from receiving that information. So we don't want unwanted switches being propagated to in the network. There are some other security measures or hardening efforts we will institute as well as we proceed, and we'll discuss that later. So let's move forward with implementing the VTP configuration. Let's clear the screen. And here, as we did earlier, unauthorized personnel only, restricted access. We are warning people, if you're not authorized to access the device, please do not. And access is restricted only to our authorized people. We're being prompted, but some people will ignore that. So we have something else here. We're prompting for a username. If they do not know the username, this should keep them from accessing our devices. So here we have another best practice to harden our network, another best practice as a security measure in the network. And as usual, we're going to copy and paste the configuration. Let's give it a few spaces and then let's validate that configuration. Exit and now copy and paste. We have VTP version 2. VTP operating mode for this particular for this particular switch is server mode. VTP domain name is Atlanta. And we see VTP version 2 mode is enabled. Let's clear the screen and move forward with STP. STP is in charge of managing loops in the network. STP will ensure that our network is free of loops. Think about just going around and around and around. That exactly is what a loop is. You're just looping through. And we don't want that on a network because as you get more and more traffic on a network, the network becomes congested, and then no one can get through on the network. No data is moving back and forth on the network. Think about a traffic jam. Within a traffic jam on the street, you can't really get anywhere. But this type of traffic jam we'll have on our network will be even worse. It will actually take down your network, and therefore the business will be unable to function. So you don't want a traffic jam or a loop taking place on your network. You need your network to remain loop free. And we do that by using spanning tree. Spanning tree is turned on by default, so it will automatically um, block loops on the network. When you first turn on your network devices, what happens is spanning tree starts to examine the network and it makes the network loop free. When it is loop free, that is what's called convergence. The network has converged and it's become loop free. At that point, then your network is able to function and pass traffic back and forth. So what we want to do first is to set the root of our spanning tree. We want the biggest and most powerful switch to be in charge of that so that our network will converge as fast as possible. And if there are any changes in the network, that the biggest, fastest switch can make the adjustments as fast as possible and keep our network loop free and therefore available and functioning. So we're going to make the core switch, which is the best switch that I have in the network and the fastest switch. And remember, this is in a stack mode, so we have two switches acting as one big switch. So I'm going to go ahead and copy, and this will make this particular switch the root of spanning tree for our VLANs on the network. So as you see how that ties in to the VLAN configuration as well as layer 2. STP and VTP are layer 2 protocols, which means they only work on layer 2 and in our LAN. So it's restricted to just the LAN portion or local area network of our network. All right. And now, instead of using just the default version of STP, yes, let's use a faster version of STP, therefore, which will allow our network to converge even faster. A few spaces. Let's exit. Let's validate. Always validate your work. So remember, we have VLAN 5. This switch is the root of VLAN 5. Another way you can tell, all of the ports that are connected are in forwarding, FWD. So that's another way. VLAN 10 here. This is the root. Everything is forwarding, all connected. Everything connected is forwarding. And we do that. And we take a look for VLAN 20. Look for root. Sorry, it was here. Root. Everything is forwarding. And last, VLAN 30. This is the root for VLAN 30. Everything is forwarding. The next thing you want to do is to utilize write mem or copy run start and save the configuration. Thank you.